It is going to be an interesting 2023 on Capitol Hill, and one of the biggest battles between the Biden administration and the Democratic-led Senate and Republican-controlled House. The debt ceiling. The U.S. is at the limit right now and is having to use what are being called extraordinary measures to pay the country's bills on time. Joining me now is Chuck Todd, moderator of NBC's Meet the Press. So, Chuck, one of your guests Sunday is West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, and I'm sure this topic will come up. How much can Republicans, especially that hard right bloc that was able to get a lot of concessions, how much can they dig in before they get blamed for any economic disaster? And then how much can Democrats dig in before having to agree to spending cuts?
I actually don't think they have the leverage to dig in and force spending cuts on this debt ceiling. I really don't. I think there are enough Republicans who believe that, you can't default on the debt, and there are other places to extract concessions on spending cuts, like called the regular budget process. And, it may mean that we may be setting up a showdown over whether or not there's a government shutdown. But one could argue if you're going to fight over spending, that's at least the proper venue to do it. The debt ceiling's not the proper venue to do it. What you're doing is you're playing with matches next to a gas can. And that's what makes it irresponsible. And I think to the point of it's just not, it isn't going anywhere, but we're going to get 5 months of overheated rhetoric because both parties see an opportunity to brand either themselves or their opponents, right? Republicans want to try to regain the high ground on spending, even though when they were in charge, the debt skyrocketed in the 2 years of Trump's presidency, where Republicans controlled everything. And then, of course, the debt skyrocketed during COVID. The debt skyrocketed with spending from the Democratic administration, too. So you have that. I think that's what the next 5 months. And I think Democrats see an opportunity to showcase, look at how irresponsible they are. Look at what they want to do. When ultimately we know there are enough cooler heads that the normalcy is going to prevail here, but it is going to be a bumpy road until we get there, and it's an unnecessary one. I mean, it really is. We're sitting here, we have folks that are willing to set themselves on fire for something that it is not the place where spending cuts are even relevant. So it's not going to be fun to watch. It's going to be uneasy. Don't look at your 401k for the next 5 months. But I do think we'll be fine on the other side.
All right, so moving along here in Washington and across the country, we're seeing dueling marches and rallies set for this weekend surrounding the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade, which is, of course, very different, and it has a different meaning this year. Now, abortion appeared to be a big issue in the 2022 elections, but obviously we don't know what we're going to see in the next 12 months. But if you have a crystal ball, Chuck, and you're looking ahead to 2024, where are we headed with the fight over abortion rights as it relates to future elections?
I think it's going to be a top 3 issue again. I don't see how it isn't. Every single state legislature in America meets this year and will be dealing with this issue because why? The abortion issue was thrown back to the states. There are more states that are advocating new restrictions on abortion than there are states that are advocating new expansion of access to abortion. And I think when you look at where public opinion is, this is not a 50-50 issue. This is a 65-35 issue, 60-40 maybe, even maybe if you wanted to look at it through a certain lens. But when it comes to having some access to an abortion, it's more like a 70-30 issue. So I do think the Republican Party is very divided on this. You have some that want to go all the way and have a ban from conception. Then you have some that want to allow some exceptions, and you have some that are even what would be deemed by some having a more pro-choice position. The governor of New Hampshire is a good example of that. And I think that divide in the party is going to play itself out in the presidential primary. So I don't know how the Republican Party by 2024 is able to say, hey, we can quote unquote put abortion behind them and focus on other issues. I just think the issue's too unsettled for it not to be a top 3 issue by November of 2024.
Well, here in Georgia, our Governor Brian Kemp has begun his second term by promoting the state on the world stage at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. So when you look at how popular the governor is with conservatives, should there be more talk about him as a possible 2024 presidential candidate if he's willing to go that route?
I think there's no doubt that he has fused together an agenda that looks like a post-Trump conservative Republican Party agenda that could succeed, right? He's certainly on cultural issues very conservative. On business issues, though, very pro-business. And on climate, he's not a guy who sticks his head in the sand. So he's been, it's fascinating to watch him. Now, I don't know if 2024 is the right year for him, unfortunately, because I think the personal feud with Donald Trump probably doesn't help him. Even though he overcame it in Georgia, he may not be able to overcome it in other places. But I do think Brian Kemp, really more than anybody else, I know a lot of attention is given to Ron DeSantis, but Brian Kemp smiles every once in a while. Ron DeSantis doesn't even smile much. So I think if you were to say, who do I think is somebody that is figuring out this path post-Trump, but still seen as a true conservative who can get elected? I think Kemp's a model here, but I wonder if the Trump feud does restrict his chances in 24.
A lot of folks will be watching to see what he does and how he maneuvers with this. Meet the Press airs Sunday morning at 10 on 11 Alive. Chuck, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jennifer.